Capturing photos of birds in flight can be extremely difficult, but today we're going to do a deep dive into a specific tip that I think is going to help you capture birds in flight so much easier. Let's get started. As you already know from clicking on this video, the tip that I'm going to be diving into is shooting birds in flight on windy days. Now, I've broken this video down into 3 key points about this tip. The first key point is that windy days tend to slow down medium-sized birds to large-sized birds while they're in flight. Yes, they also do slow down smaller birds, but smaller birds on windy days, they like to hide away. Whereas our medium-sized birds like raptors or razorbills, or our large birds like gannets and pelicans, when they fly on windy days, they are slowing right down. A good example of this was I was down in San Diego last week for the San Diego Birding Festival, and I found some burrowing owls. And they are a little bit smaller of a bird, but it was such a crazy windy day that I knew that I'd be able to get great shots of them flying, only because when they come in, and this goes into our second key point, is that you can predict their flight patterns better. So when it's a really, really windy day, birds tend to take off into the wind, and when they land, they tend to hover. So with these burrowing owls, there was a pair of them, and I waited until one of them stood up, and then it got very active and it started flying back and forth. It would fly away from the burrow, it'd fly back to the burrow to join its buddy. I knew which way the wind was going, so I waited for that moment where it would be flying into the wind, because birds tend to take off into the wind. So the burrowing owl took off into the wind, and it was landing near its buddy. So that was my time to strike. As it was flying into the wind was pushing against it, causing it to slow down, and then when it was landing, it was hovering for a moment. That's when I got my shots. That was same with shooting pelicans while I was in San Diego, and I actually got some shots of a meadowlark that was in flight. Again, a smaller bird, but only because it was windy, I was able to get the shots, because while they're in flight, they are so much slower. They're fighting the wind, which is slowing them down, which is just awesome for us bird photographers. And for key point number 3, you want to find an area that has tons of bird activity. A good example of this is a pond filled with waterfowl. The reason this is so important is because you don't want to just go anywhere on a windy day to get birds in flight. You want to go somewhere where there's a higher probability of birds coming in and out of an area. So a pond where there's lots of waterfowl, eventually some waterfowl is going to be wanting to leave the pond, and some are going to be flying back to the pond. And that's your time to strike. If you just sit and wait in an area with lots of bird activity and wait for them to come in and out, that's your time to take the shots. Because again, going back to key point number 2, we know that the birds are probably going to be taking off into the wind. And when they come into land, they're going to be hovering. They're not just going to be coming in hard like any other day. On a windy day, they're going to be coming in a little bit slower, which makes it so much easier while we're taking our shots. So good places to maximize our potential where lots of birds are going to be around is on coastlines where there's lots of gulls, near ponds with lots of waterfowl, or any type of colony of birds, like a seabird colony out in Newfoundland that I run a workshop at, that you could press the link down below and come to. Just saying. So this was a quick one, folks, but if you want more tips on shooting birds in flight, I got a whole video on it right here for you. Well, folks, that's all I got for you today. Like, subscribe, and all that other stuff, and goodbye.